welcome back to the Junius Maltby channel, friends. Glad you could join us today. Sorry I've been gone for quite a while. It's been a busy couple of weeks. Spring's here, gardening, having to do all of that, and as well as family commitments and so forth. But today we're going to have a pretty good conversation, I hope. We're going to talk about the two coins you see in front of you. One of them on the left is a Roman Denarius, silver Denarius, from the reign of the Emperor Trajan. And the one to the right is a bronze coin issued under Constantius III, one of the very short-lived emperors during those, almost toward the very end, basically. I would almost argue that the Roman Empire had ceased to exist. It was fallen apart under this reign. But let's talk about the coins, take a look at them. This, of course, being, if you can see it, try to get a focus on there. I'll have to zoom out in order to get you guys a good view of it. You're going to really want to look at this coin. Get some good views of it, and then we'll talk about it. There you can see the head of Trajan on there. And on the back, I believe that is a representation of the goddess of victory with a Roman inscription. And then you've got this bronze coin here, Conantius, on the front. And then a pretty warlike or violent image on the back, if you can make that out. It looks like you have a soldier. Oh, come on, focus. These cameras just drive me crazy. There you go. It's kind of running somebody through with a sword. Alright, now to talk about them a little bit and kind of what they mean, what they represent here, and how it relates to us. Well, if you look at the history of Roman coinage, we kind of talked about it one day on here. The denarius was the silver coin of Rome. The fineness of the silver content varied with the political and economic circumstances. And as you know, if you watched that, I put a link up about inflation and the fall of the Roman Empire. It's pretty obvious why this one's silver and this one's bronze. As you can see by the dates here, this one is far earlier in the Roman Empire's history. It's circa 110 AD, whereas this one's about 357 to 361 AD. Now Trajan, the emperor over here, the silver one you see, he was considered, well, he was voted, declared by the Senate as the Optimus Princeps, the best ruler. He's remembered as the successful soldier emperor that presided over the greatest military expansion in Roman history. So he led the empire to attain its maximum size and territory in its extent by the time of his death. So under his rule, Rome pretty much reached its peak, its apex in size. He also was implementing social welfare policies. So it's interesting, the correlation between the emperor implementing big social welfare policies and also that the Roman Empire reaching its apex, its peak, and from there it was pretty much downhill. Who knows how much that had to do with it, but I would argue that through those social welfare policies and inflation and the things that happened afterwards in order to fund them and also fund military expansion. You look at the funding of military expansion and empire building and then the social welfare programs at home, and it's no wonder that shortly after those two crossed paths and started to happen frequently, that they had to start to devalue the currency, dilute the currency, and thus the Roman Empire began to fall apart. He was considered one of the second of the 5 good emperors who presided over an era of peace and prosperity in the Mediterranean world. That entry is from Wikipedia. If you go read about Trajan, interesting individual. I had the opportunity to see Trajan's column in Rome when I was there visiting a few years ago. Now this gentleman over here, Flavius Constantius, he died 2nd of September 421. He was the Western Roman Emperor for 7 months, so he wasn't a ruler very long in 421. A prominent general and politician, he was the power behind the throne for much of the 410s, and in 421 briefly became the co-emperor of the Western Empire. This part's interesting. In 412 he was expelled from Italy by the Visigoths under Ataulf. And in 413 he held his first consulate. In 414 he began a military offensive against the Visigoths. And some interesting history there. Now, when you read about I want to get back to the Denarius, because I actually don't even know what they called the Constantius. If it was supposed to represent a Denarius, I don't know. I'm positive, I'm certain that it didn't have the same purchasing power. That's quite obvious, being that this is bronze and this was silver. And it got to the point in the Roman Empire that they were not only diluting the silver content of the Denarius, but they would end up making them after this. So between the time period of this coin and this coin, there was some coinage in between where they would take bronze and dip them in molten silver and coat them to look like silver. Much like after 1964, when they stopped making quarters and half dollars out of silver and dimes, they would then strike them out of copper-clad nickel and then give them that silver appearance on the outside. So the coins looked the same, however they were lighter and didn't contain any precious metal whatsoever. Now, around 225 BC, the first distinctively Roman silver coin appeared in history. Classic historians called these coins the Denarius or the denarii, but they are classified by modern numismatists as the quadrigiati, if I'm pronouncing that right, which is derived from the quadriga, or the 4-horse chariot that's on the reverse, and which, with a 2-horse chariot or a biga, was the prototype for the most common designs used on silver coins for the next 150 years. But you get to around 211 BC, and Rome overhauled its coinage and introduced the denarius. So around 211 BC is when the first denariuses kind of pop up on the scene. And the first ones contained an average of about 4.5 grams, or 1/72nd of a Roman pound of silver. It formed the backbone of Roman currency throughout the Roman Republic. And a lot of historians say that the denarius, the recognizability of this coin around the ancient world, and the known weight and value of it, the content of its silver, helped kind of create trade routes and bind civilization together in kind of one effort, in exchanging goods and services, the flow of capital. I mean, it's just the Roman currency and their commitment to making a silver coin the way they did, of a known weight and purity, and obviously recognized with the faces of the emperors on them and the inscriptions on them. It really, think about it, there were probably parts of the world back then on the periphery of the Roman Empire that they were probably trading in beads and rocks, pebbles, pelts. The concept of currency like this, I know it existed before the Romans. Obviously it existed with the Greeks and things like that, but it really helped bind that ancient world together and bring everyone together to trade. Now, this is an interesting fact that I found when I was reading about the denarius a little bit. The wages of the Roman Empire. So if you look back at the early Roman Empire, the daily wage for an unskilled laborer, so think of an unskilled laborer back then, was 1 denarius with no tax deductions, or about $20 in bread. So it was like $20, I guess, a day, for this one little silver coin. So you'd work all day, and that's what your pay was, that one silver coin. By comparison, a laborer earning the minimum wage in the United States makes $58 for an 8-hour day before taxes. That's before taxes. Utilizing, so after taxes, I don't know what a minimum wage maker would get for a day's labor today. However, it is interesting that 2,000 years later, we're not that far apart as, you know, I mean, after taxes, let's say it's $30, $40. These guys were getting $20 in Roman bread. But you think of the costs of living. I would imagine that 2,000 years ago, you know, you didn't have the water bill and the, let's see, you know, electricity. They didn't have that, obviously. But I know there was quite a burden on citizens back then for taxes and tariffs. They have looked back at some of the, they have the logs, I guess, the shipping papers for a lot of the shipments that took place coming into ports for Rome and everything. And I was very surprised at how high the taxes were for every good. I mean, it was 100%. It was incredible, the amount, like, just for wine, to bring wine into a Roman port, the taxes that were levied on it from other places. It was incredible. So yeah, they had quite the tax burden as well, which, and that was towards the latter end of the Roman Empire. It kept building. The taxes were going up, the currency values were dropping, as you can see, and eventually the Roman Empire crumbled. Interesting, the fineness of the silver content that varied with these. After this, after the Roman denarius in the years of Trajan, and they became diluted, that's when the trade that we talked about, that I brought up earlier, all the binding of the empire together and the exchange of goods and services, that fluid motion of back and forth, you know, currency going out and goods coming in, it began to slow down and eventually ceased to exist. It just locked up. It seized up. The economy just basically ceased to function when the currency became garbage. And people, I guess it was mandatory to pay taxes in gold. People couldn't get it. People started hoarding it. They were hoarding their gold and their silver, and that's why you find these hoards of like 5,000 denarii just buried in a big pot somewhere. People didn't want to relinquish their good silver or their good gold, and they hoarded it out of existence. Merchants stopped working. They would just pack up and leave town. People would leave their property unattended rather than pay the taxes on it. So there was this population shift, this abandonment of parts of the Roman Empire. And, you know, you get towards the 357 AD to 361 and then 400 AD. The empire was basically being overrun with Visigoths and Vandals, and it just, well, you know the rest of the story. The fall of the Roman Empire. It crumbled, and we entered the Dark and the Middle Ages. A lot of history was lost. A lot of knowledge was lost. A lot of good art was destroyed, and some ancient, beautiful cities were just overrun with barbarians that, you know, could basically, the highest level of their understanding in science was they could strike a flint and maybe start a fire to cook some meat on. But, you know, these are people that were living in animal skins and in caves when the Romans found them, and had plumbing and architecture and engineering and aqueducts that flowed for hundreds of miles. It's amazing. If you guys ever get a chance to visit Italy and go see even the heart of the Roman Empire, but even parts in North Africa and in France and in Germany, there's other places that I haven't been, I'd love to go to, that were the outer bounds of the Roman Empire. But the culture and the history and just the things they were able to bring to these cultures, and a lot of it because of this coin, the Denarius. You know, we look back at history, and here's something I'm holding that can directly tie me and connect me to the Roman Empire. And it even still holds value today. The silver that's in this coin still holds value to this day, which is pretty amazing. But that's the amazing thing. On a side note, as we do on this channel, that's the amazing thing about coinage. It connects you to a bygone era. You've all seen the 1878 Morgan dollar I carry in my pocket. That's just the way it is. These coins coins always exist. They may get buried, they may get lost, but then they're rediscovered at times. Pretty interesting connection that we have to history. I think that's what's fascinating about coinage, is you possess coins right now, you and I, and we're flesh and bone. You and I are going to pass through this world, be gone one day, dead. But think of how many people held this denarius. How many laborers were probably paid work. You know, this was probably paid to a man, and then he bought bread with it and food and paid his bills, and then it was repaid to somebody else, and it was going through the economy in ancient Rome. Everyone who touched that coin back then, when that was actual currency, their bones may not even exist today. They've been completely erased from the earth. They've been decomposed. They're dead. And that will eventually happen to you and I. The gold that you have in your little hoard, in your little stash, might be on someone's camera 2,000 years from now, if the earth still exists and still turns on its axis. And you and I will be gone, buried, dead. And the empire we currently live in might be, crumbled and being discussed on some video that some other individual has produced on the YouTube 2,000 years from now. So that's just an interesting concept to think about. You know, these coins, they stay around, but we go away. Well, that's going to wrap it up for today's Junius Maltby channel. Hope you guys like the new intro. I'm trying to figure out how to work the new computer, and it'd be fun to hang out, talk to some of you guys sometime once I figure it all out. But thanks for taking part. Thanks for the comments and likes. And as always, appreciate the support you guys have for the channel and being patient with the long time lapses in between videos. Thanks, and as always, have a great, safe day.